Hello, my fellow behavior analysts. Welcome to your crash course on the progress monitoring tool AIMSweb, letter naming fluency. Due to your school's need for extra support administering and graphing progress monitoring assessments, we have put together a series of videos that introduce you to the different measures you may encounter and a brief overview so that you'll be prepared when you enter the classroom. Let's begin. Designed by Gary German and Steve Jenin in the late 1990s, the AIMSweb passage set, specifically for this video, the letter naming fluency probe, is used to measure kindergarten students' ability to correctly identify upper and lowercase letter names within a 1-minute period. The readily accessible AIMSweb assessments are able to be utilized at various grades. This specific measurement is used to measure the sublexical skills such as phonological awareness. The skill set of letter naming and letter sound fluency are pivotal to reading success, as the knowledge of letter names lends to the sound of letters. Both are the initial building blocks for earliest efforts at decoding and spelling. Here, we will focus only on letter naming fluency. As AIMSweb has multiple assessments for universal screening and progress monitoring, there are many documents available to support you while delivering and measuring student performance. Ensuring you are seated at a table in a quiet room, void of distractions, is the best location to deliver the probe. Following the monologue provided, have the child follow along with their finger on their student copy, naming as many letters as possible. Start the timer once all the student questions have been answered. As the administrator, you have the choice to collect data on paper or through a device. Both methods require that you only provide 3 seconds for responding before providing the letter name, marking it incorrect and prompting the student to continue. As behavior analysts, we are accustomed to error-correcting students following the BST model. During this probe, it is important that you do not error-correct. Treat this probe as a baseline measure for later program design reference. Obviously, teachers and special education educators have more experience delivering this probe and those similar to it under the umbrella of CBM. As a behavior analyst, your work providing behavior interventions, reinforcement for appropriate skill acquisition, and assisting in teaching basic life skills provides a unique perspective to understanding the RTI framework, as the principles used in ABA can also be applied to identifying student academic needs, planning and implementing the appropriate interventions, and then evaluating student response to those interventions. When delivering the assessment using a paper method, draw a slash through the incorrectly identified letter, or place an SC over a letter when the student self-corrects within 3 seconds. When utilizing the computer method, you are to click or touch the incorrectly identified letter, and touch the letter again if the student self-corrects within 3 seconds. Please familiarize yourself with the scoring guidelines as written by AIMSweb to better understand any variations and/or exceptions that may arise during the probe. It is imperative that scoring be done immediately following the 1-minute testing period, and that any and all qualitative notes be documented during this period. Once all student scores have been collected, it is important that you work with the teacher and all other professionals within the school to assess whether their score is adequate. The score itself informs the teacher whether or not the current level of instruction is working for that student, or if they require more intensive support, such as Tier 2 or Tier 3 instruction, where modifications to programming, grouping, and instructional time are made. As it stands, the majority of research pertains to the results from curriculum-based measurements when conducting tests with children, or the history of curriculum-based measurements. Here we discuss a study by Ardonin and Christ that examined the measurement errors across 3 CBMs: Formative Assessment, Instrumentation, and Procedures for Reading, also known as FAIPR, AIMSweb, and DeeBLES, which are the 2 more commercially available passage sets. The researchers' main goal was to determine whether the FAIPR passage set would result in reduced measurement error as compared to the AIMSweb and DeeBLES. The authors hypothesized that the AIMSweb passage set would result in significantly less measurement error than the DeeBLES, because the AIMSweb passages were equated using both readability formulas and observed performance of a small sample of students at each grade level, where DeeBLES passage sets were based primarily upon readability formulas only. Looking at the variables of standard error of slope and standard error of the estimate, the authors were able to measure the marginal mean of weekly growth and the SEB and the SEE. The standard error of slopes, referred to as SEB in the research, was looked at in reference to the number of false positives and negatives found when analyzing graphs after all student scores have been collected. The larger the SEB, the greater amount of false negative and positive decisions, leading to poor recommendations for students to be placed into different tiers of intervention. The standard error of estimate looks at the variability in student performance when graphed. When students miss a period of assessment for whatever reason, this is reflected in the graph. The larger the SEE, the more substantial the variability is in the data for student performance. As stated by the authors, the results demonstrated that the FAIPR passage set resulted in significantly less measurement error than did the Ames Web and Diebels. An additional analysis of the research showed that Ames Web passage set resulted in significantly less measurement error as compared to the Diebels passage set. Now the pros and cons. The advantage of Ames Web passage set and Ames Web overall is the fact that it is readily available for purchase and use, as you are able to administer the test electronically and on paper and can be used for multiple grades. It is cost effective for a range of schools. Furthermore, the Ames Web website provides multiple support documents, tutorials, training, and webinars for teachers, parents, and other professionals like yourself. Following the research by Ardonin and Kreis, the advantage of Ames Web in comparison to Diebels, ignoring the experimental passage set of FAIPR, is that it produces less false negatives and substantial variability when scores are collected and graphed. On the other hand, the research is still lacking in terms of examining the differences of the individual CBMR. To end off this brief introduction to Ames Web, utilizing evidence-based research methods and measures to inform program planning and intervention implementation is imperative to RTI and applied behavior analysis. As it stands, because Ames Web does fall under the umbrella of CBM, it is an evidence-based measurement that is validated and can be used. Yet, on its own, very little research has been done to analyze the individual validity, reliability, sensitivity, and specificity of each CBM. This concludes the presentation on Ames Web letter naming fluency. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact us. We wish you the best in your school conducting these assessments, and may the data be ever in your favor.